I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Crumwoody, would you please read our vision statement?
Certainly, Mr. President. Our vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. Next is a presentation. Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sarah Harris and Shani Ford. Presentation on the Stepping Stones Out of School Time and Jefferson Edison Celebration and Collaboration. So, ladies, you and whoever you brought with you, thank you for being here.
Thanks for allowing us to present. Little thing, here we go. Not much with IT here, so. Get it up. Thank you for having us tonight. We're really excited to start off the school year with celebrating one of our newest out-of-school time programs at Jefferson Edison Elementary. We have LULAC Council 10's president here with us, Mr. Mike Reyes, and Tori also from LULAC. And then in the back we have Ms. Pitts, who is the principal of Jefferson Edison. So thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Sarah Harris. I'm the Community and Schools Partnership Manager for the district. And Shani Ford, the Stepping Stones Manager, is here, and she'll start off our presentation. We're really going to look at celebrating the new Stepping Stone site and the partnerships and collaboration it takes to have these programs for our students.
I did. Yes, I did. It's what happens when you don't go to the doctor when you're supposed to.
I get it.
Celebrating the new Stepping Stone site. Jefferson Edison is a brand new 21st century grant site, which means we started with a summer program in June that served approximately 60 students. We ended up with an average daily attendance of about 45 that came to program from 7:30 to noon, Monday through Friday, from June 10th through August 2nd. The program is for kindergarten through 5th grade. It focuses on academic enrichment. It's curriculum based. We did a focused reading intervention this year at Jefferson this summer, and it really went well. Our after school program is getting ready to start on Wednesday. We have 17 programs starting on Wednesday. Jefferson is the newest. It'll operate Monday through Friday right after school until 5:30. We offer academic intervention supports, enrichment activities, structured recreation, and monthly study trips. This is Stepping Stones overall in terms of how we reach and partner through the district to provide after-school programs, before-school programs, and extended day and out-of-school time. Collaborative partnerships. We have two other main partners with the City of Davenport, Park and Rec, as well as Scott County Extension. We have 17 after-school programs, 3 before-school programs, 7 summer program sites that served over 700 students this summer alone, 5 21st century grant sites, 3 before-school programs, 95 City of Davenport staff, 40 certified teachers, 10 America Reads volunteer, and several youth corps as well as AmeriCorps that serve with us all year long. In a basic, what our registration and what our makeup was last year is 804 students benefited from being in the Stepping Stones program, 180 kindergartners, 166 first graders, 136 second graders, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, average daily attendance of 722 a day. We actually, as of when I left the office tonight, have over 700 registrations alone. So our attendance this year will be close to 1,000 students participating in Stepping Stones every day after school. 54% of the Stepping Stones participants receive free or reduced lunch. 98 students receive third-party payment through child care assistance and DHS.
With some of the history on Stepping Stones, we're here celebrating the partnerships and bringing our best to the table with all of the programming and different things that the students can do. This really looks at bringing the partners together and reducing the duplication of efforts. It maximizes each partner's best assets, focuses on equal access for families when there's multiple outreaches to our families in the district, invests in community venues, leverages multiple resources. We can do more together. And we choose to work together. Davenport is a great partnering school district. The picture that you see there is LULAC Council 10 during the summer with some of our students reading at the Jefferson Edison Summer Program. LULAC Council 10, we're here tonight really thanking them in partnership as they are one of the main agencies at Jefferson Edison. Each and every partner that we outreach to, there are many more that sit at the table for Jefferson Edison and multiple stepping stone sites. But each agency believes in offering programs and services that support children and youth who are here and become a component of caring and all the other assets that are provided through the programs that we have. Out of school time is, like Shani mentioned, after school, out of school, summertime, and it's really important that we continue to enrich them and engage them in academic learning during those hours. LULAC, as I mentioned, is a key partner at Jefferson Edison because one of the things when we did the outreach is LULAC came to us and said, we would like to offer sponsorships to the students that are in your program. And they provided $1,000 in sponsorship for our Hispanic Latino program participants at Jefferson Edison. And the breakout is below. They had 22 males and 18 females that they sponsored and they paid for. The breakout of the students all received financial support from LULAC Chapter 10 to attend the Stepping Stone Summer Program at Jefferson Edison. LULAC also volunteers their time at Jefferson Edison. The partner has really stepped up and come into the Stepping Stone site at Jefferson Edison, and they do literacy outreach and reading intensive, and they work with our students in the program and volunteer their time, also doing field trips and other activities. Without the important support of LULAC and the scholarships, some of the students may not have been able to attend the summer literacy program at Jefferson Edison, and it was critical that they receive this, as there was a lot of reading intervention, which allowed the students to start the school year today at grade level in reading. So we're very excited that they were able to help support. We are here really to say thank you to LULAC Council 10 and to Ms. Pitts and Jefferson Edison for their continued collaboration and support with the Stepping Stones program. There are multiple things that LULAC Council 10 supports the school district on, as far as Stepping Stones being the recent partnership. There's also dropout prevention, volunteering, and multiple continued efforts that LULAC continues to support the district, our families, staff, and students with. So. The difference, the Davenport difference, is typically what we call it in our partner meetings. Through collaboration and focus on continued improvement, Davenport offers comprehensive out-of-school time program that improves quality of life for all Davenport citizens with collaboration as the foundation. We look at no one organization can accomplish what we have accomplished together as a team. So thank you for your time, and if you have questions, please let us know.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions by the board? Director Zamora.
Yeah, I thought Stepping Stones was a Y program.
No, Stepping Stones is a collaborative partnership between the Davenport Schools, the City of Davenport, and Scott County Extension. Stepping Stones has been in existence since 1999 through DCS.
What's the Y program then?
Latchkey.
I'm not sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the Y does operate their various after-school programs within the Y, but Stepping Stones is specific to what operates within the Davenport Schools buildings.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Director Sherwood?
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Reyes and LULAC, too. They're involved in lots of things around the community and have always been a very important part of this community. Couple of things. You have 54% of your kids are free and reduced, but the district average, I think, in Trade Elementary is 62%. What do you attribute that difference to?
We operate our programs on a sliding fee scale. So in terms of program access, parents can, whose students receive free lunch benefits qualify for the lowest price. We operate our 21st Century Grant sites as well in the high lunch percentage buildings. But there are still parents that aren't able to access due to the fees associated with the program. We continue to look for scholarship opportunities through Davenport Schools Foundation and United Way. We're always looking at further opportunities to serve the students. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how.
And do you think that's we know that the free and reduced is a broad spectrum of money. It goes from $18,000 for a family of 3 to $44,000 or something like that. Is it that upper end group that it tends to have the ones because of the sliding scale? They're the ones that seem to have the lack of money to get into this program?
It tends to be the upper end of the free and reduced because lower end of free and reduced a lot of times qualify for what's called child care assistance through DHS.
Right.
So that in some instances, yes, that's what's happening. It's the invisible poor.
Yeah, and that's troubling. And I want to applaud you folks, obviously, for what you do. You do some terrific stuff. I think if we gave you enough money, you'd be able to solve all of our problems. Thank you.
Anything additional? Director Robertson.
First of all, I want to say thank you for all that you guys do in supporting our kids and making sure that they, get a jump start and a head start on learning. And also, Mike, whenever there's something good going on, I always run into you. So thank you for what you do, and thank Blue Light Council too. Thank you very much.
Director Kluhl.
Thank you both for what you've done to promote this program, the collaborations that you've gone out. And I know that it hasn't, the collaborators haven't always come to you. You've had to go to them, and I know that's hard to do, but I appreciate that. Also appreciate LULAC and what you've done for the community and for our schools and for our kids. I'm wondering, even with the scholarships being provided and the grants being found, transportation is one of the primary impediments to kids being able to come to the programs, or would you just say it's financial?
In many respects, it's just financial. In many of the neighborhoods where some of our poor students live, we have 21st Century Grants that help subsidize those programs. In those instances, Monroe, Hayes, Buchanan, many of those students walk. So I haven't heard as many concerns about transportation as I have in some respects the fees that are associated. And we try to keep the fees at a minimum. And in a 21st Century Grant site, fees can never be a barrier. So if a parent were to come to me and say, I cannot afford this program, they would be admitted on a full scholarship.
Well, I know in talking to Principal Pitts, one of the issues that she's been working hardest on is trying to create a front door for Jefferson that is a door that can be opened by all the students there, and the work that you all are doing with these kids to help them open that door are just an example of what it is that we are all about. After all, opening that door of education for all of our kids. I really appreciate what you all have done on behalf of those kids.
Thank you.
Anything else? Director Crumwitty.
Again, I want to thank LULAC, and I want to thank the two of you. I do have some questions about your numbers, and I wasn't clear, although this is the Jefferson Stepping Stones program. If I understand this right, students are coming from several schools?
No, we serve the students within their own home buildings. So the programs operate in 17 sites. Our first day is Wednesday. So the only place we don't have a Stepping Stones program is Walcott and Walcott. Just Walcott.
So we do have Stepping Stones program
In every building
school.
within the district.
Okay.
And we do a walking school bus from JB to Madison. We combine that site.
Okay. So at Jefferson, we had 722 daily.
No, the 722 students are overall. That's a summary of the program as a district
'Cause
from
that's
last year.
That's what confused
Yeah.
me about your numbers here,
Right.
because we were talking about the Jefferson
And then we bounced. Yeah.
program, and all of a sudden I looked at these numbers and I'm thinking, wow, I didn't know we had that many kids at Jefferson.
No, we have, so our biggest sites have 80 to 85 students in them, and our smallest sites have approximately 20 students in it, depending on the night and what's going on within the community in terms of attendance varies based on winter, spring, and summer. So
So are all the Stepping Stones programs after school?
we have 3 before-school programs at Harrison, Wilson, and Bluegrass,
Okay,
where we have a late start
okay,
building.
great, thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah and Shani. Nice report, presentation. We'll move on to communications. August 19th at 5 p.m., superintendent evaluation at the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. August 22nd, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., Meet the Candidates Forum, United Neighbors, 808 Harrison Street. August 26th, 7 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester boardroom. September 2nd, Labor Day holiday, and will be closed. September 3rd, which is a Tuesday at 5:30, Committee of the Whole, ASC Jim Hester boardroom. September 9th, 7 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester boardroom. September 10th is school board elections, and we would encourage all of you out there to participate in the elections and encourage your your friends and neighbors to participate as well. September 23rd, 7 p.m., organizational and annual meeting at the ASC Jim Hester boardroom. Next is open forum for community input. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We have 2 open forum requests tonight, and you will have 2 minutes. We have Dan Flaherty and Janetta Combs. We'll start with Dan, and please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Dan Flaherty, 2137 Warren Street, Davenport, Iowa. I'm also a social studies teacher at Davenport Central High School. I'm here tonight to urge the board to revise Board Policy 504.09 on cell phones and electronics. Current board policy does not support the board's vision for the Davenport School's education. In fact, it may hinder progress toward challenging conventional thinking and preparing students to compete in a global society. Currently, mobile phones and electronics are not allowed during the student day, yet almost every student has a cell phone, smartphone, or other personal device, often paid for by a parent. Our students are the most connected generation in human history, yet the moment the bell rings, the student is supposed to turn the phone off and put it away, even if they expect an important message from a parent or guardian or other important person. Many students can't resist reading the message or texting a response, so they attempt to covertly text, or a phone might even accidentally ring. In the event a teacher catches them, we are to take the phone, call security to get the phone. If the student doesn't cooperate, also to get the student, and then take it to the office. The office then requires the parent to come and get the phone. Now, as a teacher, this amounts to at least 1 minute of lost instruction time. It's got to be worse for the administrators involved as well. It creates what could be positive relationships and makes them negative. The problem can be even worse at passing times. Davenport faculty and staff are supposed to take the phone and sometimes the student to the office. Students, they may not know. Instead of building positive relationships with our students, current policy fosters negative interactions between students, teachers, and staff. This could be avoided with a more progressive policy. I asked the board to develop a policy that allows students to use mobile phones and other devices during passing times and during lunchtime. This will help students meet their need to be connected and will reduce classroom and hallway disruptions. I also hope we can allow teachers to use them as long as they have instructional goals in their classroom. I had more to say, but 2 minutes are 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Next is Janetta Combs.
My name is Janetta Combs, and I live at 6 Hidden Valley Circle, Davenport, obviously. I apologize, I'm not a public speaker. I'm here on behalf of my 5-year-old son, who is attending kindergarten this year. And from the time that he entered preschool at the age of 3, he had anticipated on attending Wilson Elementary, as did his older 5 brothers and sisters. Which brings me to the reason that I'm here today. Due to the district's new policy on boundary changes, we found out through the news I was following that he was not going to be able to attend Wilson Elementary School. I did follow the news, and as soon as we found out that he was not able to attend Wilson, we did follow what we thought was the procedures to possibly for him to be able to attend Wilson. And come to find out, even though these were supposed to be, I don't even know if they were rules or guidelines to appeal the process, that there really wasn't a process in play. If we wanted something to happen, if we wanted him to go to Wilson. So I'm here asking you today to please, if there's a process or anything, I've talked to members of the school board, and too, I found out that there is no process in play for me to try to appeal and get my son to go to Wilson. I know my story is not much different than probably a lot of other parents in the district, but I feel like my child's voice, our voice, should be heard, and that there should be a process in play for that.
Thank you, Janetta. And thank you both for participating in our open forum. It is always important for people in our community to have a voice at our board meetings. We'll move on to the consent agenda, and before I ask for the motion, please note that there is an addendum on the table to the consent agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration, including the addendum that we were presented tonight.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Robertson.
I don't have any discussion. I really have a point of emphasis that I want to place on an appointment classified. Lee Martin is coming back to campus security at North High School, and what he brings to the table is more than just campus security. I think there's a lot of guidance and direction that he gives to the students at that school on a daily basis. So I'm glad to see that he decided to come back.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Not, we'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Sherwood. Yes. Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration for the adoption of bills from the bill listing periods July 4th, 2012 through July 17th, 2012, that being a special release with the President's approval, and for July 18th, 2012 through August 7th, 2012. The resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary and reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn in the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented with the following voided checks. Checks being number 308488, payable to Karen Stocking in the amount of $175. That was the wrong amount. Check number 308698, payable to the Iowa Department of Human Services in the amount of $497,320.72, that being the wrong amount. Check number 309218, payable to Stephen Couch in the amount of $210.
That's wrong. Should be 2013.
Okay. Payable to Stephen Couch in the amount of $210, and in that event, there was 2 checks needed. And check number 309235, payable to Tricon General Construction in the amount of $329,352.35. That check was voided and replaced. I'm not sure how to do this. I would like to correct my motion to note that those the year dates in the resolution were read as 2012. However, they should be 2013.
I think that's an appropriate way to do it. Thank you. Is there a second? And so the second, you understand that the second
Yes.
includes those changes of the year date?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Each year, the Davenport Community School District ship stops in the summertime, dead in the water, and waits for the next year. And it's been, as the teachers came back last week, it sort of gets moving. But today, all the passengers got on, and it's not stopping till May. And it's a huge ship, and it takes a while to get going. But as far as I can see, except for one thing I'll mention in a moment, we've got a great start to the school year. I got something from Andy Nerick today to warn everybody. Davenport Police Department is doing special enforcement in school zones this week and next to help remind motorists to slow down in school zones. Today they issued approximately 50 citations. So for all of us, slow down, school's back in session. I'd like to mention balanced enrollment. It's something that none of us like. I hate balanced enrollment. We worked very hard this year to do boundaries and a strict transfer policy that would eventually mean that we would never have to send somebody out of their home district to another school. But we still have this year people that we have to do that to, and until we really work out our grandfathered students that we know are there, we're going to probably have to do this for a couple more years. So to me, that's the major glitch. We're still looking at, first of all, we have to decide which transportation is available, and then which schools have room, and then where they will go to school. So we still have people that won't be able to go to school until at least tomorrow. And again, I hate that, but I appreciate that we worked all year to try to do something that will prevent that in the future. On Saturday, we had our graduation destination event, and I'm sorry that Sarah Harris left. She was the one that put this together. She is an amazing leader. She's very, very efficient and effective. It was at the River's Edge. We had 30 people who put up organizations, community organizations, that displayed there in a vendor sort of atmosphere. We had a lot of play from our parents and our students, and I think it was a great afternoon. We made some very solid contacts of parents generally bringing their students back to try to reconnect with us so we can perhaps get them back into the school system, but also alerted the community the importance of us all working on our dropout prevention rate. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a, excuse me, just a second. I have a motion regarding the public hearing for the North Softball Complex renovations project.
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for the plans and specifications as presented for the North Softball Complex renovation project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the North High School softball complex renovation project as published in the Quad City Times on Friday, August 2nd, 2013. Anyone wishing to speak on this project, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Director DeFau,
Yes.
Director Zamora,
Yes.
Director Kluwel,
Yes.
Director Sherwood, Director Crumwitty,
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of district-wide security cameras project?
Mr. President,
Director Zamora.
I recommend we approve the administration's recommendation of the lowest responsive bid from Communication Innovators of Eldridge, Iowa for $327,304 for the district-wide security cameras project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Sherwood.
I have a question for Scott, if you can get up there.
Is this a disease?
Well,
I wish I had a good
welcome to
story
my
for you,
world.
but I don't.
When we originally discussed this, I thought we were talking primarily about cameras. Now, what is this district-wide system, video system? What is that exactly?
Well, it'll all be part of a district-wide system where we'll be able to access all schools, from a central point if needed. It's just these are just the first four pieces of that district-wide system.
Okay, and what's the need to have that ability?
Well, in the event of, we need to have some single points of contact in the event of a crisis. For example, we could pull that up at the administration building. If we had, God forbid, an event at a school that we had to rely on video, we could pull that up. The police department could pull that up. The dispatch could pull that up. The sheriff could pull that up and see what's going on inside the buildings. If we didn't have a district-wide system, if we just had one individual one for each school with no way to connect it district-wide, we wouldn't have that ability.
Okay, I get that. Now, what about protocol as far as how that's used? Because clearly it is, it's also subject to abuse. What would be the protocol for when that's accessed?
Well, it's only accessed by the school administrator and their enforcement officers, primarily at the high schools.
Well, I understand inside the building, but I'm
Right.
talking about the district-wide access, when you downtown could access this.
They typically would not access it unless they were asked to. The possibility would be there that they could. They will have the passwords. We couldn't stop in the middle of while an event was beginning and give them the passwords so that they could get in.
Oh, no, I understand that. I just want to make sure that in lieu of a crisis, okay, that the building administrator would have to give permission to have that building surveilled outside of his building. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Because I think that becomes a little.
We'll have to have some agreements with those parties that are going to access that we could put that in place.
Yeah. Okay. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Director Zamora.
I guess what I think I'm hearing Bill say is he doesn't want it to be used for spying on people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you will have protections against that.
Well, we'll have them sign an agreement that would say, only in these events should they be accessing the system.
Director DeFau.
I believe we, in fact, recently approved a security camera policy that gave very specific references to who can and cannot access videos and under what circumstances. And I don't know that there was a provision for a district access to building-specific tape.
Any additional discussion? Director Robertson.
Yes, initially, when we first started talking about having security cameras, there were a lot of discussion that went on, and there were some of us who were not for that. And my initial thought process that it really would be about trying to have a surveillance of who is on our grounds and who is, but now it has evolved, and it sounds like, you know, we need a security system for our kids. And I just find it not very good that we would have something that we would talk about, you know, in that sense. I don't mind surveilling the ground, but I really have a problem with it. And at some point in time, you know, someone will access it that shouldn't have. And now we even mentioned that the police department, you know, they'll be able to look at, have we migrated to that our schools are in that kind of condition that we need security cameras that you can see everything that's going on? I really don't think so.
But this thing was heightened whenever we had, you know, the tragedy in Connecticut. And knowing that if something like that happens in our schools, we need to know where the active shooter is and be able to follow them. So it's not a matter of keeping up with students, although we have in PAC used these cameras whenever there has been assaults in the schools to try to determine, you know, who did it. But the main thing we need it for is for the active shooter. And, you know, none of us want to think about our schools being attacked, but if it does, the police department needs to know where the attack is coming from, where it's going, who's injured, so that they can take action. And that's the thing that I see this being. And I remember as soon as that tragedy happened, I came forward and I said, here are the things we're doing in the schools. And I thought that most people thought that it was a good idea. So again, it's not to look after our students. It's in that awful case that we have an attack in the schools, and we need to be able to trace and fight back.
Cameras are typically, I'm sorry, Director Robertson.
And Dr. Tate, I'm glad that you made mention of that. I'm not concerned if it's going to be used for what you said, okay, that we're talking about where someone actually comes out of the building and want to do bodily harm. But I am opposed if we're talking about it's for our students, but it's for outsiders. And in case there is a tragedy, then I'm okay with that.
Director Sherwood.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. The reason I supported this initially is because of all the experience I've had with these cameras and the way that they resolve lots of problems. When you have a parent that doesn't believe your side of the story about how their child is behaving, you can pull tape up and show them exactly how they're behaving, and that calms the parent down and gives them a full understanding of what they need to deal with. If you have a theft, you often can see who the perpetrator is. If you have an assault, who initiated the assault. Those things happen every day in our buildings, and these cameras resolve problem after problem after problem. If it were just a matter of active shooters, the guy that did our Alice training here said that you is likely to be struck by lightning, I think he said 5 times in a row, as you are to have an active shooter in your building. So if it were just that issue, I wouldn't spend a dime on these things, quite frankly. But since we're putting them in, and the capability is there to help the police department in the very rare event that might happen, it'd be silly not to do it. I think that makes perfect sense to do it. But the primary purpose for these, as far as I'm concerned, is to facilitate the day-to-day operations of our buildings and to resolve all those zillions of issues that come up every day in those he said, she said kinds of things. Right. And they're very useful for that.
90% of all of school video is reactive to the types of incidences that you just said. The rest of the time, we don't have somebody sitting in front of a camera. They may be in front of a officer that may be sitting there and see somebody come in, you know, or on the property that's not supposed to be there. It just gives us that ability to go back and be, unfortunately, reactive, but in some cases proactive, that we can see it if we recognize a car that's not supposed to be there, you know, that's been banned from the campus. They can take those steps to head them off before they get in the building.
Any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
Well, for the record, I just wanted to talk briefly about why my vote will be no. The board has heard me ad infinitum on this, so I won't belabor it. I think there are about 3 of us in the room that are running for Davenport School Board, and I'll bet you each one of us, safety is the primary concern that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming month. Very important. I'm concerned about the encroachment on privacy with this issue. I have been from the beginning. I certainly see the value of watching the movements of an active shooter, and there's that issue of our civil rights and protection that we will always argue about. And for me, it comes down on the side of privacy of the individual. I think that our students deserve dignity. Finally, the last thing that I have to say in regards to that is that I believe that it teaches our students the wrong thing, and we'll talk about that later with policy and cell phones, as Dan Flaherty has brought up. We have a responsibility to start to empower our students, to give them some responsibility. When we start putting cameras up in our buses, in our hallways, what we're saying to them, in my estimation, is that we don't trust you, that we're going to watch everything that you do. And I think it sends the wrong message. I think there is a better way to go about this, and personally I would like to see an expanded discussion about what we can do to keep our children safe. So my vote will be no.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? I've got a couple of quick things. How do you transmit the data from, say, a building to the administration building?
Through the fiber, the city fiber network. They're all connected. Basically, it has an IP address at the school, and so they would have the ability to pull up that IP just as they would to do anything.
Okay. One of the things, as I was thinking about Director Kluhl and wondering if he was going to say something, I thought about transparency. And I thought about informing the public and students and all of this. And I was thinking about drones and the NSA and some of the things that they've gotten into by not letting the public know what's going on. And although it's not part of this vote, I think it should be part of our consideration is how do we communicate what we're doing. I guess I'll leave it at that.
I believe there's an interview tomorrow, Dawn, with Channel 6? WVIK. Yeah, and we'll make an effort to get out to the newspaper. She's not here tonight, but to the newspaper, and we can also post it on the buildings that as people come in that they are, that they have possibilities that they're being recorded.
All right. Well, I don't think that's probably really your responsibility, but I just wanted to make note of it. If there's no other discussion, we'll call for the vote. Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
No.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
No.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of Lincoln Academy sprinkler system?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the lowest responsive bid from Continental Fire Sprinkler Company of Davenport, Iowa for $258,000 for the Lincoln Academy sprinkler system project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Sherwood.
I just want to again restate why I'll be voting no on this. Currently, as it stands, we have one tenant in there that requires sprinklers that would be on the first floor, I believe, and that there's no requirement for us to put sprinklers throughout the rest of this building. There's no indication I know of that's going to make kids that are participating there during the day any safer. And if it's such a good idea for this building to protect our property, then we should be doing it in all of our buildings. So I think we could get away doing this significantly cheaper and should be. Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
No.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of West High sound and dimming system?
Mr. President,
Director Zamora.
I recommend we approve the lowest responsible and responsive bid from Davenport Electric Contracting Company for $281,075 for the West High Sound and Dimming System project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Well, we had this discussion about whatever it was wasn't good enough. Is this now good enough? It was Mr. Sherwood's comments.
We had a nice presentation at the Committee of the Whole, and I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I was unable to be here, but you're satisfied now. Okay, thank you.
Additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Zamora.
Yes?
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of Unity Point at-home contract?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve a contract with Unity Point at Home for RN or LPN services at $50 an hour for the 2013-2014 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Director Zamora.
Yeah, I'm behind a little bit, and I'm not sure what this is all about. Are we outsourcing nurses or something that we didn't talk about?
What we're outsourcing for this is the IEP services, so not necessarily just nurses. It could be speech therapy, occupational therapy. It's going to vary with the student itself. So although it might be skilled nursing, I think that's different than RN, and honestly, I can't tell you much more than that. If we have questions, I'd have to delay it and try to get more information.
I'm wondering why it says RN and LPN services then, if it means more than that. But I'm confused about what it means and why we need it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at up at the top, the financial agreement, so I can't tell you. If there's questions that you'd want answered, I'd have to just wait and bring it back to you next time.
Director Sherwood.
I have similar questions, and if this is urgent, then I'll vote to support it, but I'd rather have a more detailed understanding of what it's about.
I can't tell you that it is urgent. I think if it were, we'd probably have someone here that could explain it, so I'd suggest we just delay it.
Okay.
Is there any additional discussion?
Deb, do you have some information?
I think I can speak about it.
This is a service that Patty Pace Tracy contracts with for some of our most medically challenged and significant special ed students that we have. So it requires students who require more care than just what our building nursing staff can provide. Oftentimes these people travel to and from school with our kids on the bus because they need even that amount of support. So it's services like that.
Director Zamora.
Is this paid out of the special education budget?
Yes, it is.
Additional discussion? I'm concerned, Deb, about the total cost. It's hard to figure out from the way this is written. It said costs estimated at $50 per hour for all day, every school day. And I'm thinking if it's estimated at $50 and we have two different levels, one is RN and one is LPN, and my guess is that the estimated costs will actually turn out to be actual costs instead of estimated costs, and that the rate will be the same for both levels. Is that probably right?
Why it's estimated, I believe, is because our student population changes from year to year to year, so it would be hard for Patty to put an actual dollar amount on it, not knowing which students are going to be present and what their needs are going to be. And I can't really speak to the difference in charge between the LPN and the RN. I would assume there would be something, and that the $50 amount would be the high end of the price paid.
Director DeFau.
Well, I think a follow-up question to that would be the comment or the notation that we currently have for students. Could additional students then, once we've approved this contract, could additional students be added without approval of the board, I assume, because we've approved the contract?
Basically, because it's estimated, I would assume that would be the case.
So we could experience even greater costs and not even be made aware of that fact.
Is that something that you would need from Patty, or you want us to have her give more of a dollar amount for the students that we know about now?
Well, it seems to me that there are a fair amount of questions at the table, speaking for myself and not the board.
And it depends on if the board wants to table this, then it might make a motion to do that. There hasn't been any indication of a sense of urgency. Otherwise, the board's going to go ahead and vote on this contract. Is there any other discussion? Director Crumity.
I do have concerns about this contract. First of all, it says the purpose of the contract is home care services, and I'm not exactly clear on that, because this was a nurse that perhaps, and I have had experience in the past with this, nurses get on the bus, ride with the students to the facility, stay with the student all day, go home. But the way this is labeled, home care services, is it beyond the school day? And then I too am concerned about the LP and RN $50 contract, and as Director DeFau said, I'm also concerned what this means for other students beyond these four. So I would certainly like to see us delay this until Patty can come and explain more in detail.
Is that a motion
Yes,
to
it is,
table?
Mr. President.
All right.
Move that we table this contract until Patty can come and explain in detail what it means.
Okay, thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? I don't recall parliamentary procedure, but I'm going to allow discussion on the motion to table. Is there any discussion on this motion to table? If not, we'll call for the vote to table. Director Crumity?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Kluel?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries, and this topic, this motion has been tabled. May I have a motion regarding approval of Allen Behavioral Consultants contract?
Mr. President,
Director Crumity.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve a contract with Allen Behavioral Consultants for ESY services starting August 2013 to May 2014 for 180 instructional days at a per diem of $520.
May I have a second? Is there any discussion? Director Zamora.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand this one either, as well as the fact that on the consent agenda, we had a assistant behavior expert or something for a salary, and I wouldn't know if that's included in this or not, so I need a little more information. And I don't usually ask for that.
Is there any additional discussion? Director Crumity.
I, too, am very concerned about this contract. I don't understand it. I don't, first of all, when you read the contract, the contract is for 180 days. There are some words, I think, missing from that. I'm not clear I understand it. And I don't understand who evaluates this. I don't understand what services are going to, why is it that we have to spend this amount of money for one student for individual services? I don't know where they're delivered. Are they delivered at our school? Are they delivered someplace else? I don't understand, or I'm clear, why can't we provide these services in our own district? And if we do approve this contract, what does that mean for other types of students with this similar situation? So I would ask again that Patty come forward and explain the need to us why we would need to approve such a contract.
Any additional discussion? Director Robertson.
Just to comment, going forward, I see that the person that's actually on these contracts is not really here to talk about and say, you know, why we're doing that. So going forward, I would ask that if your name is on the contract and you originated the contract, that you could be here so you can speak to the content, so there won't be any confusion.
Any additional discussion? I'd entertain a motion to table if somebody would want, so we can get this discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
I also want an answer to my question. Is the assistant behavior analyst that we approved in the consent agenda a part of this, or is this an additional? And why is it 180 days when there's only 178 instructional days?
And no, the position has nothing to do with this. This is above and beyond. And the other things you asked, great questions. I wrote them down. We'll bring the expert forward and get the answers.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to table? We'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Crumwitty?
Yes.
Director Zamora?
Yes.
Director Sherwood?
Yes.
Director Robertson?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries, and this motion has been tabled. May I have a motion regarding approval of 2013-2014 board calendar?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the recommended 2013-2014 official board calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Zamora.
Yeah, I really, really, really don't like this calendar. I think we're starting way too early. I think if you say that kids lose stuff over the 2-week Christmas holiday, we're making a big mistake, because we're supposed to be teaching them for their whole life. If they're going to lose it in 2 weeks, well, we're wasting our time.
It's the board calendar.
Oh, the board calendar. Oh, I thought you were saying the other calendar.
Another
Okay,
time,
then we're
another
all right.
discussion.
I withdraw any comments. I read it to be the school calendar, because I really don't like that, though, yes.
That's all right.
Okay, we got it.
Okay.
I got to change my no, then. I had it even written down here. I was in a hurry this week.
Is there any other discussion on the approval of the board calendar? If not, we'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of modifications to diversity plan reference chart school ratio?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I move that the board approve the policy committee's recommendation of a revised diversity plan reference chart school ratio as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
As a-
Director DeFau.
As a matter of explanation, as everyone is aware, that as we were in the process of discussing both the diversity plan, the attendance center policy, and the school boundaries, we availed ourselves of the advice of legal counsel throughout that process. And just in order to ensure that we were, following all the regulations and legal mandates that we would be required. Once we had voted upon and approved the policies and the requisite plan. Those are forwarded again to legal counsel. Wendy did have some concerns about a lack of clarity in regard to the language at the bottom of the chart itself, and that it wasn't clear that both intra-district transfers and out-of-district open enrollment were ruled or guided by this ratio and by this chart. So she suggested that we might consider making some clarifying additions to the plan, which the policy committee was in agreement with, and we're bringing that forward for your reconsideration.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Robertson.
The question I have is, and I've asked it a couple of times and I haven't gotten clarity on it. Because of what we did with high school, and then we had different things that we applied to grade school and middle school, what kind of situation does that put us in when people are asking to transfer out of the district? If we allow people to move internally and go whatever high school they want to go to, then can we say that you can't transfer out of the district? I'd like to know where we stand on that from a legal counsel perspective.
Director DeFow, you want to take a shot at that?
I will attempt, not being a legal counsel and not attempting to play one either. But we did ask that same question of Wendy Meyer, and her counsel was that we're required to have a plan that legislates how we would manage internal transfer and out-of-district open enrollment requests. They do not have to be the same plan. And so she did not see it as a situation where we might experience litigation.
Is that sufficient, Director Robertson?
No, but we'll move on.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
No.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding policies?
Mr. President,
Director DeFow.
I move that the board approve the policy committee's recommendations for the following policies. Policy 305.05, school bus transportation, and 305.18, paid conditional busing fees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Again, for matter of clarification, these two policies have been brought forward by Scott Martin requesting some of the changes that are being reflected as a result of the budgetary decisions we made earlier this year as they relate to paid conditional busing. With the fact that school began today and the policy isn't congruent with what is now to be our practice and our modified busing, then we were asked to circumvent, circumvent's not the right word. We elected not to follow our regular procedure, which is to bring it forward for discussion and then bring it back a second time for a vote in order to modify and approve the plan so that it can be implemented immediately with the beginning of the school year.
Thank you for that. Is there any additional discussion? Director Kluhl.
Just that it's always nice to see the size of our policy book decreasing.
Yeah, because, yes, 305.18 in fact would be deleted because we no longer have paid conditional busing.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeFow.
Yes.
Director Sherwood.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Robertson.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Zamora.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to discussion items. I am going to change the order. Director DeFau needs to be leaving in about 40 minutes. So the order will be the diversity plan discussion, then policy review, then revenue purpose statement. Director DeFau, you want to lead off with diversity plan?
Well, I guess I'm not clear as it relates to what the discussion was to be about the diversity plan, because we just approved the ratio.
And I think that was the significance, was to pass the ratio for right now. That gets us in compliance with what Wendy really needed us to. And I think the policy committee is working on attendance centers.
Right. Wendy did also suggest that we make some modifications to the attendance center policy just to clarify some of the language, which
Okay.
we're in the process of doing, but we're not prepared to bring that forward at this time.
All right. So unless anybody else has questions on the diversity plan, we'll say that's sufficient. Move on to policy review.
And the policy committee had been reviewing numerous policies in the last several months, but given the other conversations we were having, elected to wait until some of those decisions were finalized. So we bring to you several policies that were part of your board packet this week. And I can read through them by title and number, and if there's no discussion, we can just continue on. But 502.15, drills for emergency. And there was the addition of a sentence and a clarifying phrase to that statement, to that policy. Director Cromwell?
Yes, Director DeFau. And perhaps Superintendent Tate, you can also jump in this. Drills for emergency, and I was wondering, this is a very traditional policy which takes care of tornado drills and fire drills, which has been past practice for years in this district. But now I'm wondering about other emergency drills, and now that all of our staff is going through ALICE training, are there certain drills that we do for ALICE training for our students, and should that not be part of emergency policies?
Right now, although not part of this, we do lockdown drills. The ALICE drills are going to have to take place, those lockdown drills, but we don't know what that's going to look like yet. We want to get the staff trained. We need to then start thinking about what we're going to tell students and parents. But yes, we will need to come back and specify. I just don't know how often and when we think will be best, and more than that, what they're going to look like. They're going to be different in each of the schools, so it's going to be quite a complicated thing, and we can decide how much we want to put in practice and how much policy. But we certainly will get back to you. It's above and beyond this.
So will we have some procedures in place district-wide this year for ALICE?
As soon as the staff members are trained, we have drills in place because each one reacts differently. Some stay locked down, some escape, some actually will confront the intruder. So it's all going to vary, and there won't be anything that says how and when you do it. It's so much relying on the leaders, and those are the teachers that we have. So again, it's going to be very complicated, and we're going to have to decide what that looks like and at what levels we'll train. It's going to be different, obviously, for elementary, intermediate, and high school.
Sure.
What we're thinking about deeply, oddly enough, there's not a lot of models for us to follow out there.
I was just thinking we should have some type of policy because it also falls into that whole emergency category. And, whether we wait with this until that is taken care of or whether we go ahead and modify it later. I just want to make sure that we include that.
I wonder if we might add a sentence as it relates to, drills for, intruder lockdown protection, and then actually I think what Dr. Tate's referencing to would be more an administrative regulation.
Yeah.
So we could incorporate it into the policy so as not to have to bring it back, but then how it's implemented would be part of a reg that we could review later. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Director Sherwood? Anybody else?
Director Zamora.
Well, I have a question about the change from at least to whenever possible. Was there some comment from the fire department that they didn't want to do this or couldn't do this?
There was I think the observation that it's not always easily scheduled. And so that it would be our preference that they would be available, but that because, by nature, fire departments are frequently called out to attend to emergencies, that it is less able to be scheduled.
Would it also be true that we haven't been doing it?
Did we get that feedback? I don't know that we got that feedback specifically.
No, the fire department observing at least one fire drill in every building.
I would not say that currently is in my memory of 8 years, no.
Okay, so be compliant with our practice.
Makes sense, yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else? Policy 503.01, promotion and non-promotion practices in elementary schools. And you'll see that there's a section, second grade literacy requirement, that is stricken. I think that referred specifically to the Reading Academy, which isn't offered in that format at this time. Continuing with 503.09, credits earned in a foreign school. And we modified the second paragraph as removing the specific reference to accreditation, and instead that we would comply with all requirements to the Code of Iowa and the Iowa Department of Education, just to clarify it. 505.09, attendance at events outside of school. Again, just a nominal, instead of using the phrase school child, replace that with student. 505.10, intermediate school band uniforms. We checked with the curriculum specialist for the fine arts, and they were confused as to why the policy was even in the book, and I don't think it's another one that hasn't been really given much attention in the last several years. And so we recommended to remove it. 505.12, student distribution of non-curricular materials. Some on the board may recall a few years ago when we were challenged when someone wasn't allowed to distribute some materials at one of our high schools, and we're not recommending any changes to this policy. Director Cool?
Just a thought. It just seemed to me in reviewing this that the language saying that non-curricular materials are to be distributed must be submitted for approval by the building principal and must meet certain standards seems rather indefinite. And I think that since we have such a strong administrative regulation, that we might consider saying that non-curricular material to be distributed must be submitted for approval by the building principal and must meet criteria established in Administrative Regulation 505.12A.
I think that's reasonable.
And also, I thought that, when we drafted this policy, we put in that last paragraph saying it's the responsibility of the superintendent to create a draft administrative regulation to implement the policy. That's really
Unnecessary.
a message that can be deleted.
Great, thank you. Moving on to 506.01, collection of money from students. And again, there are no recommended changes by the committee. I think this is one that Marcia provided some guidance with a few years back. Director Crumwoody?
Yes, I have a question about this policy. I think we've talked about this before, and if you look on the next page, under deposits, and maybe Marcia, you can help me better understand this, because it's been a while since I've been in this situation, but all monies collected are to be deposited each day according to guidelines, and I'd like to just briefly tell us what those guidelines are. And I've brought this up also several times since I've been on the board. Any money left overnight in school buildings must be in a secure location. I want to remind the board that we do not have secure locations in some of our buildings, and so I'm curious what that means, secure location. Because we don't have safes in all of our buildings.
We don't have safes in all of our buildings. We do, however, have safes in the majority of our buildings. And in those buildings where we do not, we've asked them to put it in the safest, securest location that they have. And in some buildings, the amount of money that they have on hand is just going to be the amount of money they may keep in a petty cash fund. And so that's why when we say that all monies are to be deposited every day, we do have a security service that comes around to pick up deposits and take them to the bank. And the buildings know what the schedule is for that pickup. But if they would happen to miss that pickup, or they have something that happens late at night where they're collecting funds, it may not be feasible for them to go to the bank for a deposit. So then we make arrangements for them to keep it secure. Or we have also given out keys for night deposit so that they can make a deposit in the bank on their way home, or have security take them to the bank to make that deposit.
At one time, there was a discussion about possibly putting safes in those buildings that we didn't have safes located.
Right.
Is that something that might happen in some of those buildings?
We have, it has been several years, but we have offered that up to buildings and said that we would even coordinate so that we could make a bulk purchase of safes if that's what they chose to do. And like I say, I haven't kept track of it lately of how many actually do have safes, but I do know that that was a push several years ago to get some type of safe, whether it be portable or a larger variety in each of the buildings.
Of course. I've got extras.
Okay, thanks, Marcia.
Is that sufficient? Okay. Moving on to 50602, activity funds. And again, no changes are recommended at this time. 506.03, class or student gifts to school. Again, with no recommended changes. .01, type of school organization. And there are no recommended changes. We did have some discussion at the policy committee as to whether this was a necessary policy or not, but I think we decided to leave well enough alone. 601.02, school calendar. The only changes were some capitalization and the removal of a verb that was unnecessary. Director Kluge?
I don't have any recommendations on the policy as we have it here, only that I was thinking about this, and I think the policy committee is the right place to begin discussion on the change in the 2014-15 school year that's going to be caused by the education reform legislation, where the board will have the opportunity to use either 1,080 days or 180 days on the basis to base the school calendar on. And I think there are some fundamental issues there that we need to think about. So I was thinking the policy committee might be the right place to begin that discussion with the administration.
Well, or should we perhaps have that conversation at a committee of the whole as a starting point? I mean, I think we're certainly willing to postpone moving on this if we want to have that conversation.
I would leave that to the agenda committee.
Well, don't we already go by hours instead of days? Because that's why we do 178 days instead of 180.
That's days in our policy.
Oh, okay. But we don't do it then.
Well, because we have more instructional hours in the day than
I
are
understand why,
required,
yeah.
but yeah, we count it still as a day.
I think it would be fine as a committee of the whole topic.
Any other comments?
If I understood Margaret right, that we are going to have an issue with hours because we're going to have to get in more hours during some of the school days that we don't have enough hours. So I think we do need to have some more discussion at a committee of the whole meeting.
Has the administration had any conversation about the implications of that reform?
About 5 hours ago.
Okay.
We just had a meeting today, and we started talking about the school calendar and what we were going to bring for a recommendation, and we slipped into the 180 days and the hours. So it's very topical, and maybe Committee of the Whole would be a good place for us to bring some thinking to you about it. But yes, just today we started talking about it.
So do I hear a consensus that we would hold on moving forward with this policy until the time that we have that conversation?
It's certainly good for the current year. I don't know that we couldn't go ahead and approve it later. It's good
Okay.
for the year. But just, all I wanted to do was to have that discussion
Sure.
early on.
I appreciate that. Moving on with 601.03, instructional accountability, and no recommended changes. 505.02, student organizations. We struck the words "and gangs," believing that it was one of those does, of course, gangs are not allowed, but we'd welcome any other comments to the contrary.
Are we presuming then that there aren't any? Or just that since we presume they're not allowed, we don't have to say it? I don't really care. I'm just
I think
curious.
that our thought process was that should be common knowledge that gangs are not allowed in schools. But we, as I said, I think we could easily be persuaded to keep the language. We didn't have a strong opinion.
Nor do I.
Anyone else? 505.03, student school publications, and no changes were recommended for that policy. 505.04, social events, and I apologize, it says see recommended changes, but the recommended changes aren't noted in the information that you received. So I'm going to do my best to do a compare and contrast. So the policy that we have now reads, all school-sponsored social events shall be under the control and supervision of professional school personnel. Approval for an event shall be secured from the principal of the building involved and placed on the school calendar before any public announcement is made. Hours, behavior, and activities related to social events shall be reasonable and proper. So we took the policy that we have, and we blended the reference to hours, behavior, and activities up into the first sentence. So it reads now, the all school-sponsored social events shall be under the control and supervision of professional school personnel, including the hours, behavior, and activities related to the social event. The event shall be placed on the school calendar before a public announcement is made. Approval for an event shall be secured from the principal of the building involved, and place shall be reasonable and proper. We'll need to check on that. That doesn't make sense to me, that the place
Probably should say
shall
the
be,
place.
yeah. And I wonder if place should be even removed. Approval for the event shall be secured from the principal of the building involved and shall be reasonable and proper. That doesn't make sense either. So I think we may have to come back, not having the note as to why we made that addition. So my apologies. We will bring that back. 505 or 503.05, student library circulation records, and this is a mandatory policy by Iowa Code, and we've not made any changes, nor are we recommending any changes. And then lastly, in the 504.09, cell phones and electronic devices. And we bring this forward given the fact that we never resolved it last year, the fact that we did spend several meetings or take several opportunities to get input from our building principals, from our student board members, from other members of the community, from, we've had internal discussions ourselves at the board table relevant to this policy. So our question as the committee is, what's the next step? Do you want us to bring forward a policy, or do you want us to go seek more information at the beginning of the school year? Director Zamora.
Well, we have talked about this at length, and I hate giving in, but it's not being enforced anyway. So I'm thinking we should go with the Bettendorf one and the one that Mr. Flaherty recommended, where we allow use during passing and in the lunch hour.
Okay, so you would recommend us bringing forward a modified policy that allowed both of those?
But I still don't believe at all that it's reasonable in the classroom for a lot of reasons. But they're doing it. They tell me they're doing it. And it's not enforced, any more than our dress policy has been enforced.
Director Sherwood, did you
Just
have a
a
comment?
comment, I think Mr. Flaherty pointed out that in the classroom, what do you think, he was talking about a academic purpose.
Right.
That it's available in the, that was his point. So.
Director Robertson?
Mr. Scott, I value your opinion. I was opposed to having cell phones in once the day started because I thought it was interference and interruption. But it is an opportunity for learning to be used in the classroom. So my question to you is that if we go that route, can we control it where we're saying that it's okay for the classroom? And is it okay with you if it's being used when they're changing classes? How do you feel about that?
From the passing time situation, I am okay with them using it during the passing time. I think it allows teachers to feel like they can be more strict in their classroom, knowing that, hey, you're going to be able to check it in at the end of the period. If you really have something that you need to find out about. They just have a compulsion when it comes to using the item. And it's not, they're not going to be able to not do it for 8 hours. And it's taken up a lot of our time from the day. I would hope that it would become more strict in the classroom if we do give this out. If we do give the passing time and lunchtime, that it's become a no tolerance in the classroom for teachers unless they're using it for instructional purposes.
My only concern is if there is a problem evolving between, say, students, that they have the ability to call others that are not in our school. And that was my only concern.
I'll be honest with you, I think that's going to happen anyway. I hate to say they're so talented. They literally can have the hands inside their sweatshirt where we can't see, and they could be texting away, and they can send a very legitimate text because they have it memorized. That's how strong they are at that. I've had my own issues with technology, but kids do not have any issues when it comes to using it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Cromartie?
I'm not familiar with some of the other cell phone policies in the area. I think that Bettendorf is probably more open at the high school level. I guess I'm really curious, are we talking about the high school level? Because the policy is not clear on that. We do have elementary students who are coming to school, even in kindergarten, with cell phones. So I think we need to inquire about other policies that have been developed and how they deal with that. I can see, what we're saying at the high school, that we could probably handle it at the high school level. But then when you get down into intermediate and elementary, I think it's a different situation. So I would certainly like to find out a lot more information, have a lot more discussion before we'd approve an open policy like that.
So you'd like to know if any of our neighboring districts differentiate between high school, middle, and elementary, as well as our having a conversation as to whether or not that should be necessary. Okay.
I'll leave it to the lawyer at our table to bring up the word reasonable. And I guess I would contend that what was reasonable in the 20th century is not reasonable in the 21st, where technology is concerned. Our kids are moving forward with technology, and I think we need to follow their lead in this case, so I appreciate the policy committees taking some time to, again, discuss this, to look at what others are doing. If you've heard enough from principals, fine. I think it would be good to engage our new student school board members in the discussion. But frankly, you know, where we have situations where now I think we have Wi-Fi hotspots in all of our high schools, but we have a policy says that don't use that kind of stuff. We're speaking out of both sides of our mouth. So it is high time that we, I think, do a radical revision of how we look at this kind of technology that's in the hands of students and how we might be able to further use it in the education of those students, as well as for their own personal time. So I look forward to the policy committee coming forward with some recommendation for the board.
If you'd be willing to express your personal opinion as to the policy as it exists, I think that'd be helpful. I'm trying to take a few notes.
If I would express my opinion on the policy as it currently exists?
Yes, and whether or not high school, specifically whether or not high school students should be allowed to use their phones during passing time and lunch.
Specifically, that is the kind of discussion that I'd like to have, is when can we use it? I'm concerned about the opportunity to cheat. And I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about how teachers would walk in the back of the classroom versus being in front, because I think, having been in the back of the classroom, there's so much that teachers don't see from the front, and kids are no less devious than they were when I was in school. So that issue of cheating concerns me. But again, it comes back to the discussion that I gave earlier on empowerment of students. I think we have a responsibility to educate our students not only from textbooks but from real life. And I think if we give them the opportunity to have this powerful things that we have, and we've provided wireless infrastructure so that we can use those things in our schools, let's empower those students. At the same time, we're allowing them to fail. And they may fail, but I contend that failure is a part of the education that we owe those students. So before they get to college, before they move on with life, let's give them the opportunity to fail and show them that there are repercussions, that you have to be accountable with the power that you've been given. So I see it as an educational opportunity for the Davenport Community School District moving forward. The plan as it currently exists is moldy, dusty, and anachronistic.
But you're not going to answer my question.
Well, that's what I think of it. But I specifically, as to how I would deal with those things, I look forward to conversation with the board and hearing from folks who have been there. Ken, you know, certainly folks over here, because I've been too long out of the classroom to do that. I would be glad to sit in on discussions on it, and I would somehow like to incorporate the technology committee into that discussion, and I'm a member of that committee, and I will ask them to discuss that at their next meeting and provide the policy committee with their thoughts as well.
Okay. Director Zamora?
Yeah, I just would ask that when we're looking at this policy, that we think of it from the point of view of the staff who have to enforce it. The only reason I'm willing now to say that we should change is that they found it impossible to enforce, where if it's just in the classroom, they can probably enforce it better and be more willing, because right now it's not being, according, many students have told me it's not being enforced. It's different in every school. The same thing with the dress code for the kids. I went by Central in the spring and it wasn't being enforced.
Director Sherwood?
I spoke to Frank Wood at North Scott. They have a policy that's passing time and lunch. And I spoke to, last year, I spoke to Jimmy Cassis at Bettendorf, and they have that policy of passing time and lunch. And in both of those cases, they had worked with student groups to formulate kind of an agreement for this passing time, that the students took on the responsibility that they would, in fact, comply with classroom, not having phones in classroom unless it was okayed by the teacher, and as the flip side of that, they were going to get the ability to use it at passing time and lunch. And I think that's kind of a having that agreement is kind of an important piece of a change, that the students feel like they're part of this this thing. And I also suggest that that we might want to invite Mr. Casas and Mr. Wood to a committee of the whole meeting to have a conversation about this, because they've had this experience now for a number of years. A lot of your concerns they can address in their experiences, as well as folks like Rob and the people who've had those experiences inside of our own district. But it might alleviate some concerns.
Thank you. I'll go back to Director Robertson before, if you don't mind, Director or President Johansson. I don't think I heard from you either as to whether or not you believe they should be allowed for lunch and passing time.
Mr. Scott cleared up the concern I had. He said we're not controlling it anyway. My concern was is that during passing time, we call in outsiders to come to our school because of a problem we have going on. So I'm okay with that. The thing is that when you go back to the policy committee and you take a look at it, I hope that we don't restrict, certain kids from doing that, because we have talent in the gifted program, and now we're going to talk about just high school kids. And I know kindergarten that can bring up the world map and identify the continents and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not suggesting that we go back into grade school, but I'm just saying is that I would hope that we would lead it up to the leadership in the building and the teachers to say what they're going to use, because introducing it into middle school might be the greatest thing ever in terms of getting them ready for high school if we are saying that we're going to allow them to access and have that kind of information. So I'm always for including all where possible and not just one segment of our population.
Okay, thank you.
That answer your question?
It does answer my question.
Thank
Thank you. President Johansson?
I've got a few things. One is I've been thinking about the sense of urgency with respect to making changes to the policy. And my sense is that there's a sense of urgency in that right now we have an anachronistic and outdated policy, moldy, I forget everything that was said about it. But I also heard that we need to get all this input. And if we get input from other districts, from students, from a lot of these different areas, and I'm trying to figure out in our schedule where that all happens, and then the policy committee and how it brings, depending on where we go, I think it could be another year before we get a policy. And so I'm curious, and maybe the policy committee can take that up, but my sense is that this district and this board is capable of making a policy fairly quickly and maybe moderating the amount of additional input that's required so that we don't drag it out for another year. Second, I've made the I've expressed my concern about safety, and I will continue to express that. I have been doing a lot of research on it, and I will submit that later. And I believe that safety for everybody is very, very important. And it just frustrates me because in the work that I do, I have to see accidents and I have to investigate accidents all the time. And something like that, when somebody falls down the stairs, that can be a really bad deal. It was interesting in the discussion, the brief discussion on cheating, because I think that we have to be careful, because if we suspect that there's cheating, then does that mean that we aren't trusting all students? Well, but it's contrary to some of the other things that have been expressed here. So I was curious about it. But I would say that I talked with a past student board member in the past couple of weeks, and they told me how easy it is to cheat, especially during passing, which, of course, I was naive and I didn't understand that until they explained how it happens. But they said that's one of the things that you will just have to contend with, even if you have a contract with the students somehow. The other thing that I guess in talking with some of the principals, one of the senses that I got was to go slow, meaning don't give up everything all at once. If you give it up, you probably never get it back. And so maybe think about this, maybe implement changes on some sort of a test basis. Let's test it. So those are just some comments.
Okay, thank you.
Just, you mentioned cheating. I just thought of an aside. I thought it was interesting that how technology might lead us forward in more ways than just technologically, but also maybe in honesty. You know, it occurs to me that you can't use a cell phone to cheat on an essay test.
Yes, you can. They do it all the time.
On an essay
Yeah,
test?
they find out what this teacher wanted, and they tell the kids who are going in there next what she wanted on the test.
Well, it was a brilliant idea.
I
but
got a lot of
perhaps
high
I'm-
school kids hanging around my house. I know how they cheat. She knows.
And I appreciate all the feedback. You know, we really do want to get this back on track and resolve it. And if I were going to add my 2 cents, which you know me, I will. As a parent, yes, it's important to me to teach my child responsibility. But part of that is teaching them self-control. And I do not buy for a minute the argument that they can't control themselves. They cannot help but look at their cell phone. There are employers in this community that if you look at your cell phone during your time of employment, you are fired. That includes a major food chain that employs many, many students that are enrolled in our district. So if they can do it there, they could do it in school. So I really don't buy that argument. That being said, it does not cause me concern to allow a student to use their phone during lunch. It's their lunch time. It's their free time. There's TVs in the cafeteria, for Pete's sake. Passing time, I would have serious reservations. And I think, again, that Ralph makes a good point that, you know, we certainly could stage modifications to the policy so that, you know, we allowed lunch and then monitored that progress. I'd also, as we move forward, I'd like a report from each high school as to how many disciplinary actions have started with the confiscation of a cell phone. So, you know, how many of those have occurred and what severity. Because we've had allegations that kids are ending up with out-of-school time and suspension because of cell phones. I would like to know that that's in fact true. And I also would remind the board that this is a permissive policy. It does not preclude the use of cell phones or other electronic devices for the purpose of education in the classroom, and in fact allows it. So we are not in fact inhibiting students from using technology for instructional purposes. And that's all I have to say about that.
You done?
I am done, and
Well, thank you
it's
very
time for me
much.
to
You better
leave, so-
get out of here.
Wow.
Well, I like for all of us to be on time, and she's actually 1 minute ahead of schedule. Okay, we'll move on to the revenue purpose statement.
Thank you. I wanted to bring to your attention again that in less than a month, we've got a really very important proposition that's going to be put before the voters at the school board election, and that is approval of the revenue purpose statement. I also understand that the revenue purpose statement is a little bit confusing, and so I wanted to bring it to your attention again, and so anybody else seeing this would have a chance, hopefully, to understand what it is that we're proposing. The fast facts are that the revenue purpose statement defines what the district can use the state tax funds for, and that's our local option sales tax funds, or some people refer to it as SILO. It's not a new tax. It does not raise taxes. And approving the revenue purpose statement does not mean automatic approval of construction projects. So if you had to sum it up to explain to someone what it is, it's just that we have to ask for approval as to what we can use our local option sales tax funds for. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background as to how this all started. In 1998, the legislature created the school infrastructure local option sales tax. Again, it's called by many things SILO or loss or lost. With voter approval, a county could impose a 1% school infrastructure local option sales tax for a 10-year period of time. Davenport did that, and we were one of the first districts and one of the first counties in the state to pass that levy. In 2004, school districts were required to provide the voters with this revenue purpose statement for use of the statewide penny, so that voters had a say into what that revenue could be used for. In 2007, voters in all 99 counties in the state approved the local option or the SILO tax. In early 2008, voters in Scott County approved renewing the local option levy for an additional 10 years. And because we were one of the first ones to do it, we were one of the first ones to renew it. We renewed it for an additional 10 years, so it extended the sunset date to 2019. We also knew in doing that that the legislature was looking at the statewide penny, and we wanted to get our vote in prior to the legislature passing the act that they did, and we were successful. And in 2008, the legislature replaced the SILO with a statewide penny to be used for the same purposes, for the school infrastructure purposes, but now that tax goes through 2029. And the act requires that the majority of the state tax revenues be deposited in a secure and advanced vision for education. Now we have another acronym, SAVE Fund, and to be allocated equally to school districts on a per pupil basis. So the state penny continues the SILO requirement of voter approval of a revenue purpose statement to authorize the expenditures of that tax revenue. The vote does not determine whether the tax will be collected. That tax is going to be collected regardless of the outcome of the vote, because the law imposes the penny sales tax. What the revenue purpose statement does is it directs how the revenues for the school district are going to be spent. The voters get that opportunity. Davenport's levy currently, the revenue purpose statement has a sunset date of 2019. The statewide penny has a sunset date of 2029. We have a 10-year gap. And what we'd like to do is to extend the current revenue purpose statement to fill that gap, so then it goes out to 2029 also. And again, it directs how the revenues for the school district are going to be spent. And that can range from very specific to very broad. Most districts have very broad language, which lists all the legal uses of the statewide penny. That's the language that we had in 2008, and that's the language that we're proposing again with this vote. Here is a long list of all of the things that you can use that statewide penny for, and I don't think any of these will be new to you. We can provide property tax relief. We can build and furnish new school buildings, additions. We can repair. We can expand. We can improve. Purchase, lease purchase, equipment, technology, energy conservation, emergency repairs. All of the uses allowed in the PEPL Fund and all of the uses allowed in the PEARL Fund. And the PEARL Fund is the Public Education and Recreation Levy. The uses that we are proposing are the same uses as passed by the voters in 2008. The expiration of the revenue purpose statement, the law requires that districts without an approved revenue purpose statement, then they tell you what you can spend your tax revenues on. And here's a list of the things that you can spend them on. We would rather not fall under that jurisdiction of having the state tell us how to use our funds. We think we do a pretty good job of that ourselves. And so that's why we'd like to have an extension of our revenue purpose statement for that broad use, so we can use it for the things that we have already set out. So why do we want to renew now if it's expiring in 2019? Well, districts can borrow against the anticipated proceeds of the statewide penny. And we have talked about possibly doing a bond revenue for some additional revenues for our construction projects. If we were to do it now, we could only borrow against the revenues through 2019. If this were to pass, we could borrow against our revenues through 2029. So you see, it gives us a lot more options or a lot more opportunities if that was something that we wanted to do. The other reason that we're renewing now is districts are limited to 4 special election dates every year, and it never used to be this way. And board elections are only held in odd number years. So in order to take advantage of an upcoming school board election and save on cost of a special election, I recommended that we have the election coming up. Obviously, it also gives us several opportunities that if this were to fail, we can take it back to the voters prior to 2019. So in review, what we're doing is we're asking the voters to go to the polls and vote on the uses of the SAVE fund, the local option. There is no impact on taxes. Once again, it's a statewide penny. The legislature has mandated that. That will not change. What happens is by approving the revenue purpose statement, it's going to align it with the sunset of the funding of 2029, whereas right now it's 2019. And there's the voting information. Again, it's on Tuesday, September 10th, same day as a school board election. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and it's actually Proposition D when the voters go to the polls. And that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or is there any discussion? Director Sherwood?
How's this going to appear on the ballot?
The board had actually approved that several meetings ago. It's a rather long proposition, but what it does is it goes through every one of those uses that I had listed on the PowerPoint, that it can be used for the acquisition, the remodeling, the several paragraphs actually of all the different uses, the very broad uses of the revenue purpose statement.
And do we have any ability to highlight areas on that?
No, there is language that's prescribed that we have to send to be put on the ballot.
And how are you going to promote this?
I'm working with Dawn for a marketing plan. I know that we're planning on putting it on the district's webpage and having a page that strictly talks about the local option. I know she has some other ideas, but I don't have those with me tonight.
You have a fairly small number of voters in a school board election that you can target.
Right.
So it wouldn't take too much to put I think, an effective campaign together to pass this. But somebody's got to do it and get it done, of course.
Well, and also we can only put together information, we can only share information. We cannot advocate for or against as part of the school district. So we will have a question and answer out there on our webpage. We will present the facts, but we cannot advocate that they vote one way or the other.
I understand that. And now, is this going to be? I don't get a sense of this being a real issue for passing it, but there are often community groups that come forward and take on that responsibility of advocacy. Are such groups out there?
I have not heard of any, and I can only go by the last time that we passed it, and it was overwhelmingly approved, which was good news, but I've not heard anything to the contrary. I do know we had a neighboring district that did have some difficulties in getting it passed, but I've not heard anything.
Okay, thank you.
Director Zamora.
Yeah, and I would just like to remind, if the neighboring groups had difficulties, they turned it down in the first place. It only passed because we passed. So it's never been something that they were overly fond of anyway.
And when we first passed this, you had to pass it as a county, and now that it's a statewide, you pass it as a district, and so that makes a difference too.
Anybody else? Director Kluhl.
I was going to look at the state code to read the language, but you remember Where's Waldo? Of course you do. I'm looking at all the purposes that the statewide penny can be used for, and it's buildings, remodel, repair, expand, improve buildings, purchase. The one thing that sticks out is equipment or technology. And it seems to me that in the code, I wanted to look at it and say, does it somehow mean equipment or technology related to building or purchase? Have we used Silo, local option sales tax for technology?
Yes, we have. The caveat there is that to use it for equipment or technology, it has to be at least $500 in value.
That's the only stipulation?
Yep.
So we could purchase software. We could purchase systems.
Well, and we set aside, I believe it's $500,000 a year in the local option fund and have for several years strictly for technology. And I know that Gary has taken advantage of that.
Interesting. Thank you.
Director Robertson.
Just a quick question for Marcia. When we are constructing new buildings totally, then we actually go in and put the technology into the building that we want during that time frame, right?
Right.
So what about an existing building? Are we able to use that money to go back to upgrade technology or not?
As long as it's over $500, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional discussion? I wanted to just talk on this technology a little bit more because you and I had a conversation and I wanted to make sure that I understood it correctly, because when I explain it to people, some people have doubted that what I'm saying can possibly be true. So when it's purchase lease of all this equipment or technology, there are three things that I've asked specifically. And when I think about these and the way that we've looked at how do we pay for it, even though we have that $500,000, I think IT, and I think Gary in particular, has always looked at the money that we appropriate as being part of the budget instead of being part of these funds. And specifically a year or two ago, he talked about bandwidth as being a real challenge. And could we purchase bandwidth with these funds?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Laptops, if they were over $500 a piece, or is that total?
No, that's a piece.
So if we bought $501 laptops, then we could use these funds for that.
Yes.
And 3D printers was another area that I was looking at, and most of those I would think would be more than $500.
And I think that's probably fall more into the equipment category, but you're right, again, as long as it's over $500.
Okay, great. And so you're clarifying that we could use these funds for those purposes?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had. Are there any, Director Zamora?
Yeah, I think I'd like to point out that we have been doing that, using the money for technology. All along, we've known that we could do that.
And we have not only money set aside in the local option fund, but we also have money set aside in PEPL for technology, and then as well as in the general fund. So there are three sources that we use for technology purchases.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Marcia. Move on to administrative reports.
I do have one, Mr. President. I want to report on Lincoln School. You approved the sprinkler system tonight, and I appreciate that. When we were planning the sprinkler system, we thought about maybe we just need to do the bottom floor because you have to do it for kindergartners and preschoolers, and you have to have that because you're not a school building anymore. You're just a building, and therefore you need a sprinkler system, which is sort of counterintuitive. But we decided that with the extra cost, just do the whole building because we don't know who's going to go upstairs for some of our tenants. So that's why I appreciate that you approve for the whole system. Right now, our homeschool assistance program for the district has 2 rooms in Lincoln. They are now moving in. They are putting a library and a meeting space in one of the rooms. They're going to have a homeschool support instruction in the other space. Stepping Stones has moved entirely out of this building. It used to be downstairs, and now all their operations, they took over the media center in Lincoln, and additionally the computer lab. They also have some storage space in the gymnasium. The major tenant, the one they'll be renting space, is Head Start. They're going to have 11 total spaces. That's rooms and offices. And they're actually going to, at the end of August, put 2 rooms, start 2 classrooms, because if they put them near the end of the building, according to the fire marshal, they're okay without the sprinkler system. And then when we have the sprinkler system put entirely in, as I said, they'll have probably 6 to 8 classrooms. We're looking at an early childhood program of one room with preschool, 2 sections of 20 children each, and they'll move in after the sprinkler system is done. In the future, I'll be negotiating with the NAACP and Progressive Baptist to use other parts of the building. So the sprinkler system has been the critical path, but I think we're going to see the building full this year.
Thank you. Are there any board reports or requests? Director Robertson.
One thing I want to say, I want to give a big shout out to the Davenport North baseball team for returning to the state. And I want to say thank you to Coach Watchell and all of the hard work that he puts in, because it goes beyond the penny amount that a coach makes, the amount of time that they put in. So big thank you to the kids for their hard work and continued success at Davenport North for their baseball team.
Thank you. Additional board reports or requests? Director Zamora?
I have a request, but I'm missing a vital piece of information, so after the board over, I'll call my husband and get it.
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you. Director Sherwood.
Yeah, first of all, I want to once again thank all the staff that put together that event downtown. That was very impressive, especially the number of partners that we had inside the building. I think that was the most impressive thing to me. All of them wanting the same thing, and that's to make a better life for kids. And so I couldn't help but think at the time of Margaret Buckton's comments, and I want to say this very clearly, and sorry there's not more press here, but Iowa funds our schools well below the national average for funding per kid. And she pointed out the other night it would take a 25% increase in our allowable growth just to bring us up to the national average for funding. We have to combat in the city of Davenport a continually growing problem of poverty, and to do that effectively in the schools is difficult at best, but when you're underfunded, it becomes almost impossible. People say, well, no excuses. Well, we wouldn't give you any excuses. If we had proper funding, I think we could do almost anything, but as it stands, we should, as a state, become marching toward at least the national average. We did this a few years ago for teacher salaries, where we were well below the national average, and we had a big statewide effort, and we came up to the national average on teacher salaries. I think we should do the same thing for average student spending as well. Having said that, I also want to, I went to the Hoop Fest at Third Missionary Baptist this weekend, and that was just a hoot. There were hundreds of young people over there playing basketball, a lot of really good talent. They had free watermelon, which was really yummy, and I suggested to Rachel Mullins that we should have a presence there as a district every year. They come in the second Saturday of every August. I've been there several times. There's always a massive crowd. It's really a cool event. We should have a presence there, I think. So I hope next year that we'll have some Davenport presence, although a number of teams did wear our jerseys from the dropout thing. I managed to pass out some of those. That was kind of cool. The policy committee wants to has 2 things to turn in here. One is that we would like a discussion on policy 601.01, program goals and objectives, and that I'll pass on to you. Second one is that we would like a report on home instruction brought forward at some point, and if you need more detail on that, we'd be happy to supply that. And then the third thing that I would like to, where am I here? I'd like a recommendation from the administration. Oh, this is something else I want to speak out about too. With this new house we have for student teachers, this is really a cool thing. And it comes out of the diversity committee with the idea of finding ways to attract and retain a bigger spectrum of diversity on our staff. And I think, my personal feeling is, we ought to name this thing the Marva Collins House or something like that. I don't know if you know who Marva Collins is, but a very famous African-American educator who is a legend in education, still teaching as far as I know in Chicago. But I think we ought to name the thing. But I'd like a discussion on whether or not we should name that house some appropriate name to reflect our goal, which is a more diverse workforce. And then my last thing is, I spoke to Mayor Gluba about this parking on Harrison Street, which is all on the west side of the street, and means that down by Central High School, kids are going to be opening their doors into the traffic lane to get out of their cars to come across the street. And I said, I think that's less than intelligent. Why are we doing that? And he said that he had spoken to the Davenport schools, and they said that's the way they wanted it. So I'm wondering if that's in fact the way we want it, or do we want it on the other side where kids would be stepping out onto the sidewalk side, at least the drivers would be. I don't know if we can get a comment on that now, but I think that's a fairly serious issue.
City operations have asked us, do we want to change that? So we're in discussions, and we'll do what's best. But I just got to ask the question today, so
Okay,
we'll look
good.
into it.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Director Crumwoody.
Just real quick, I too want to, had the opportunity to attend the graduation destination event in the morning down on the levee, and I want to congratulate and thank Dr. Tate and the staff, the City of Davenport Park and Recreation Board, and the numerous community organizations that were involved in that. It was quite impressive. It somewhat reminded me of an event that the Davenport schools used to have several years ago at North Park, and we simply called it Welcome Back to School event in conjunction with North Park, and many of those same organizations that were involved in the event last Saturday were also involved at that time, along with every school in the district. And we received a lot of compliments and great press on that event. And I would hope that we would continue to think in those terms and maybe do some more of those kinds of things, because that was very, very impressive Saturday with all those community organizations. And I thought, wouldn't it have been great to have all of our schools represented somehow to encourage kids to come back and see what our schools are really like. So, thanks.
Anyone else? Director Kluhl.
Yeah, just one quick board request, and I've labeled this as an information request. And I'd like the Agenda Committee to consider evaluating the timing of a discussion on the criteria, that is, student academic achievement and socioeconomic status of the district diversity plan. I believe we agreed to delay this discussion when we approved the most recent revision of the diversity plan because there was some constraints in terms of the timeliness of that. So I thought we were going to have a discussion on that tonight under the diversity plan as a discussion topic. I think it's a timely discussion personally as one board member. I think that there are other criteria that are more important certainly than student academic achievement. And I believe that it could be a leadership issue for us to address the fact that race is important and that racial balance in our schools is important, and the Supreme Court never said that we couldn't. And I would hope that this district might take the leadership to recognize that we can face up to it or we can shuffle it off in algorithms, but I think it's best to look at it in terms of race is good, diversity is good. That's what our district is about. So I've gone on beyond what I had written here, but I'm off the soap stand.
Thank you. Any other? Director Robertson.
Yes, I would hope that before my time is up on the school board, that we would have a conversation about diversity and inclusion and then student achievement and where we are headed in terms of closing the gap with our students of color and kids that are on the low end of the socioeconomic ladder. So I do hope that we have that before I'm no longer on the board, because I definitely would like to participate in that. So thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, I've got a couple here. One of the things that I have not done a very good job at is keeping the board up to date on some of these other committees and things that go on. But I will say that today there's a city conference board that we participate in, and that board voted to adopt the Vanguard software for valuations. It may not mean a lot here at the board table, but the county has already adopted the Vanguard software. It was a pretty big deal for the city, and I don't remember the total. It's like $650,000, something like that, that it's going to spend on this and then new valuations. Second is that I think I may have mentioned it in the past, but the county conference board and the city conference board are considering merging the two assessors' offices. And I think that report will be completed fairly soon. It will be submitted to the conference boards, but it will actually be the city council that makes that decision. Our board doesn't have anything to say about it in particular, except it'll make a recommendation through the conference board to the city council. And then last, I wanted to say the graduation destination also. I probably can't articulate as well as it's already been said how fantastic it was. It was a great day to begin with. It was perfect weather. It was just magnificent. And that helps everything. And then to have all of these different groups, the different leaders, the different participants, it was just fantastic. I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody that not only helped organize it, but to everybody that came. Director Zamora.
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear, I'm not sure it was clear when you were speaking, that the conference board involves the city and county assessors, and we are involved in it because we have tax rates that we have to deal with. But why, if they're going to merge, if they're still talking to merging, and they've been doing that for many years, would they spend $600,000 to duplicate what the county already has?
That's a great question, and that was a big part of the discussion today. However, part of it is for the software, and part of it is for training and actually doing the valuations in the city. The whole decision on whether or not to merge will probably come, I'm guessing, around December, January, something like that. The actual merger, if it occurs, would probably come sometime next spring or summer, I'm thinking. And there are a whole lot of pieces that you can imagine knowing the players involved. But I don't think that they would be able to use they may be able to use the software, but there was quite a bit of discussion today about, even though it's the same software, they have different methods of valuations between the city and the county, and they aren't sure how they would integrate all that yet.
Right, but if they merge, they're going to use the same system. Besides which, I'm being kind of caustic about it, but the city doesn't assess anyway. They just take a percentage and raise everybody that percentage. So I don't know why they need all that trouble anyway.
I wish you would have been there today, because I wasn't aware of that. Okay, anything else?
All they've been talking about.
If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.